up next Facebook. But it's something that I passionately believe that at every level of business, and I'm really glad that we have Leo here talking about it as well, that we should be embracing innovation throughout all that we do. So the first definition of entrepreneurship was coined in 1800, and it was this concept that entrepreneurs move something into an area of low yield and into an area of higher productivity and greater yield. And as I kind of started getting involved with entrepreneurship, I kind of felt this great, yeah, that's what we do as consultants, and that's why, I'm well entrepreneurial. And I started to look at what was currently going on, and what are the kind of trends that have come after this definition of entrepreneurship. And arguably one of the most obvious increases in productivity and effectiveness has been manufacturing. And this is the floor at Toyota's manufacturing for their cars. And you'll see that these are their Six Sigma robots. And there's not a single person on their floor. And these robots cost millions and millions and millions of pounds to develop and create. But no longer is technology like this available to the few. I'd like to introduce you to Baxter. And Baxter is an incredible new innovation that only costs $25,000 US, requires no programming, and can be integrated into any business. It follows and mimics a human and figures out what it needs to do. It can be wheeled around a manufacturing floor incredibly easily, and it can see 360 degrees. So if someone to walk into its field of work, Baxter is not going to kill you, which is an amazing thing. And this is the result of this strive to increase efficiency and to move something into an area of greater productivity and increased yield. But what does that actually mean? It brings us to this conclusion that actually humans can be replaced now by information technology in half of our jobs. And Leo kind of touched on it, that this means that technology is the amplification of intent. And so what we're at is a point of revolution. And it's a revolution that's not often called a revolution because it's the case for entrepreneurship. So for 20 years in the US, they did an economic study of what were the drivers of job creation and innovation and economic growth. And they did this study over the course of 20 years throughout the US, and what they found was quite surprising. Because it wasn't small business, and it wasn't big corporations, but it was something that was slightly and subtly different. It was young business that were creating jobs, and it was young business that was innovating. And so what's the difference between kind of a young business and a small business? Well, it's in one hand something completely different, and then on the other it's something very much the same. Because a young business is someone who stood up recently and decided to do something different. And that can be a really small thing, or it can be something unbelievably transformative. But the point of a young business is that it was something. And that's where it starts to get quite interesting. Because young business means that we're at this intersection of innovation. And I want to be really clear, the innovation that we're talking about is not the actual ideation. I'm not in the business of coming up with ideas. The really exciting part of all of this is the doers and the grafters. The person that's there at the last minute, at the last mile, who's actually bringing this. Because at the center of innovation is someone who stood up, decided to do something differently, but actually constructed something, an environment around it, in which to achieve that very thing. And so it's probably good to pause here and to kind of bring a bit of my personal story into it. I definitely, a year ago, I was a graduate of English and theology, and I had no idea what half of this meant, what 1% of it meant. And I have a huge, huge, huge passion for theatre. I trained at the National Institute of Dramatic Art in Sydney, and then moved to Edinburgh and became a teacher's assistant for theatre. And I started to develop at this crossroads between what I did between my 9 to 5 and what I did between my weekends. I created a logo to kind of anything that sat in the middle, it counted as Treehouse production. And it was only until arriving at PwC that I started to understand how businesses worked. And I started to get quite obsessed with the part of the gray area of my life, where what in effect was just a logo and a passion for, couldn't quite communicate what it was. I wanted to figure out how you would take an idea and turn it into something. So how do I take something that I can't even communicate and make it a tangible reality? And so that led me to a program called School for Creative Startups. And this is a program run by a former Dragon's Den panelist, Doug Richard. And it's a program that takes you through 12 days over 9 months. And they took a bit of a risk. There's 100 businesses involved, and I didn't really have anything. But I just thought, I want to rock up, and I want to figure out what you guys do. And so this program, over the course of the 12 days, of the 9 months, took you through everything from logistics and legalities, and then how do you establish yourself as a business, into understanding your offer and pricing it. If you want to sell it for 40 quid in Harrods, what does that mean for your wholesale pricing, and what does that mean for your production, which then means I can figure out whether or not I'll get paid. We went through, did everything from communicating your business, understanding a brand strategy, and all of a sudden, I realized that over 9 months, you could do quite a lot. You could have a baby in 9 months, so your hair will grow 4.5 inches, or if you're really keen, you could watch Friends 68 times every episode. But over 9 months, I understood and started to understand how important entrepreneurship was. And I realized it had nothing to do with starting a business. Because by understanding all these pieces of what makes a business and how to take an idea and turn it into something, I started coming back to PwC and to really understand and have conversations that I could never have had before, what it means for our clients, why certain stakeholders behave in a certain way, why there are so many multiple agendas and all these different facets of a business that my English and theology degree was just never going to teach me. And arguably, only by trying to figure it out and do it myself was I able to do. So after the end of 9 months, in my spare time, it's still a bit of a gray area of my life, but I'm the co-founder and managing director of a platform called TreePress. And TreePress is an online marketplace to buy and sell plays for schools. And we connect the people who are writing scripts with the teachers and schools who need them. So what was a logo 10 months ago now has 620 schools, 50 playwrights, and 3 publishers who are excited for a platform that's going to launch in a couple months. But this has seen so much more. It's seen an interest in alternative finance for small and medium enterprises, to writing research papers in PwC for how we can engage with new clients, for understanding and developing a methodology of an entrepreneurial approach to projects in the customer team. And so I think that that's my personal story and it means something to me. But the obvious question is, what should it mean to you guys? Because I firmly believe that here in this room, there's 3 types of people. There's a few of you who might think of yourselves as entrepreneurs already. There's some of you who might see this as a potential future. But I'm really interested in the many of you who haven't yet realized that we should be entrepreneurs. And that has nothing to do with a business. because it's a way that we can work here at PwC. It's an amazing, amazing proposition to our clients, and it's an incredible and transformative thing for our projects. So over the last 6 months, I've worked with the customer team in building out a methodology and approach for how we can do this with our client projects. And this is currently being used on a project with HSBC, and it's also been used as a key differentiator on projects and proposals, of over £2 million within PwC already. And it's really, really exciting. And exciting for 6 kind of key reasons. The first is this concept that entrepreneurs are everywhere. And it completely underpins all that we do. It's taking away this concept that you have to be in Silicon Valley or working from your garage with a table made out of a door. That's not what an entrepreneur is. It's a mindset and it's an approach to how we solve problems. Because we help our clients with their problems. And so it's a changing of a mindset. It's also a form of management. If we're going to take ideas, we need to exploit them. And in order to exploit them, you need to really, really carefully manage them. And as a professional services firm, we have an opportunity to manage innovation, to also account for it, and to test it as a hypothesis. And this is where validated learning and innovation accounting come into it. And you've seen with Toyota, one of their great things, and I'm sure many of you know, kind of like lean approach, where they talked about kind of getting this cycle of manufacturing. The faster you can turn around the circle, the more effective and the less waste that you produce. And there's the same and a similar thing in our projects. There's a cycle here with number 5 with learn, build, and measure. So the quicker we can move from learning about a problem, building a solution, and measuring whether or not that problem is working or not working, the quicker we can go through those things, the less waste we're going to produce by solving the problem. And where it starts to get really interesting is if we're really measuring and we're really believing in the measurement of the solution that we're providing, we have an opportunity to pivot or persevere. And this is the question of, what are you going to do the day after you just did something? What are you going to do the day after it happened? And I think it's often a question that we don't ask, or at least I certainly have, on projects. And Leo asked that question of how many of us in the last week have been like, what am I doing? And when he then asked the question of how many of you guys raised that, very few of us did. And I think that it's here that's where that conclusion can be drawn. We need to be asking those questions, and we need to be challenging back, because if we don't, we end up wasting time, and that's not in our interests, and it's certainly not in our clients. So what can it offer to our clients? An entrepreneurial approach can mean that we can step up with a project and genuinely and wholeheartedly give them a first mover advantage. We can also be in a position to increase the value of a solution. We're going to validate, we're going to improve, we're going to work beyond what we would do normally. And you can also manage risk. The kind of undercurrent of all of this is that it's managed and it's measured, and by doing that, it means that you know the direction that you're going, and you're checking constantly, and you're pivoting, and you're persevering, and you're deciding whether you're going to keep one foot on the ground and retain 20% of your work and shift into something completely new. And so what could this look like in our teams? And as teams, I think that it starts meaning that we're putting a focus on things like ideation, to actually bring all those thoughts that we have as foundation and the latent capacity and potential that's in this room to the table, to be taken seriously, to be put in a sandbox, to be tested and measured alongside any idea proposed by anyone in the process. To also be able to get our head above the parapet, to start seeing complex patterns, to be looking into data and analysis, and recognizing trends before they begin to happen. And we'll also be in teams that are there to exploit opportunities. And from a personal perspective, I think that this is really, really important. Because there's been a few books recently written, one most notably by two economists out of the US, and they are saying that in the next 15 to 20 years, because of this shift with information technology replacing up to 50% of jobs, that it's going to be these three key abilities that are going to be the difference between success and failure in the future. And so I guess I hope that someone has realized that my title was a complete lie in the beginning. The reality is that entrepreneurs aren't everywhere. And I firmly, firmly believe that they should be. My personal story has involved actually going and getting there and doing it and getting stuck in and starting up a business. But in actual fact, I don't believe it's got anything to do with business at all. So I'd love to challenge you guys to take what Leo's given us over an amazing hour, but also to reach out and come talk to me and the many others who have been developing this methodology and approach to really embrace an entrepreneurial attitude and see what happens in the future. Thanks.